The stagecoach rattled to a halt in a cloud of dust, and Violet Blackburn clutched her threadbare valise with trembling hands. Gila City, Arizona Territory, 1876, her last chance at a respectable life. She'd traveled over 1,000 miles to meet Thomas Fletcher, the man who'd responded to her advertisement as a mail-order bride with promises of a comfortable home and a fresh start. But as she stepped down onto the hardened dirt of Main Street, Violet couldn't silence the voice in her head whispering that some pasts couldn't be outrun. The desert heat pressed against her skin despite the late September day, making her cheeks flush beneath her modest bonnet. Sweat trickled down her spine, dampening her best dress, a navy blue cotton with lace trim she'd sewn herself. Violet took a deep breath and approached a weathered sign that read, "Fletcher's General Store." "Madam, can I help you with your bag?" A young boy of about 12 years offered, his freckled face earnest beneath a mop of sandy hair. "Thank you, but I can manage," Violet replied with a smile. "Could you direct me to Mr. Fletcher's establishment?" The boy pointed down the street. "Just yonder, madam." "The white building with the blue door. Can't miss it." Violet nodded gratefully and made her way down the dusty thoroughfare. Gila City was smaller than she'd imagined from Thomas's letters, a single main street with businesses lining both sides, a few side streets with modest homes, and the ever-present mountains looming in the distance. The desert landscape stretched endlessly around them, beautiful but harsh. Her heart hammered as she approached the blue door. 3 months of correspondence had led to this moment: a proposal, an agreement, and her journey west. Thomas knew only what she'd told him in her letters, that she was 24, unmarried and seeking a new life in the West. The parts she'd omitted weighed on her conscience like stones. The bell above the door jangled as she entered. A portly man with graying mutton chops looked up from behind a counter. "Mr. Fletcher?" Violet inquired, setting down her valise. The man's eyes widened with recognition. "Miss Blackburn, you're here earlier than expected." He rushed forward, extending his hand. "Welcome to Gila City." Violet accepted his handshake, noting his firm grip and the genuine warmth in his eyes. Relief washed over her. Perhaps this would work after all. "The journey was quicker than anticipated," she explained. "I hope I haven't arrived at an inconvenient time." "Not at all," Thomas beamed. "I've prepared a room for you at Mrs. Holloway's boarding house. I thought you might appreciate some time to settle before the wedding." "We can be married this Sunday if that suits you." "Sunday, just 4 days away." Violet swallowed hard and nodded. "That would be lovely." Thomas smiled broadly, revealing a gold tooth among otherwise yellowed ones. "Excellent. Let me show you to the boarding house, and then perhaps you join me for supper. We have much to discuss." As they walked the short distance to Mrs. Holloway's, Thomas proudly pointed out the town's features: the church where they would be wed, the schoolhouse where he served on the board, the sheriff's office. He spoke with the confidence of a man secure in his standing, and Violet felt a glimmer of hope that she had chosen wisely. Mrs. Holloway proved to be a stern-faced woman with sharp eyes that seemed to assess Violet's worth with a single glance. "You'll be in the back room," she said briskly. "No gentlemen visitors, no noise after 9, and breakfast is served promptly at 6. "Thank you, Mrs. Holloway," Violet replied politely. "I'll observe your rules with care." After freshening up, Violet met Thomas at the town's only restaurant, a simple establishment attached to the hotel. Thomas had clearly spread word of her arrival, as several townsfolk stopped by their table to introduce themselves. "Miss Blackburn is from Boston," Thomas announced proudly to each visitor, though Violet had written that she was from Philadelphia. She didn't correct him. The distance from her past seemed a blessing. Their conversation over dinner flowed more stiltedly than their letters. Thomas spoke at length about his business success and his position on the town council, while Violet shared carefully edited stories of her journey west. "You'll find Gila City a moral, upstanding community," Thomas said, cutting his steak with precision. "We've worked hard to keep it that way, not like some of these frontier towns with their saloons and loose women." Violet nodded, feeling a cold weight settle in her stomach. "It seems a lovely community. I should tell you," Thomas continued, lowering his voice, "I've arranged for Reverend Parker to meet with us tomorrow. He likes to counsel couples before marriage." He patted her hand. "Just a formality, of course." That night, alone in her sparse room at the boarding house, Violet stared at the ceiling, her mind racing. The Reverend would have questions. There would be a marriage certificate requiring information about her family, her background. Lies could only stretch so far before they tore. Morning arrived with no solutions. After a silent breakfast with 3 other boarders who regarded her with curious eyes, Violet decided to walk through town, hoping the fresh air might clear her thoughts. Gila City was coming to life around her merchants opening shops. A wagon loaded with lumber creaking past, women hanging laundry behind their homes. She found herself drawn to the edge of town, where the buildings gave way to open land dotted with sagebrush and cactus. A ranch spread out in the near distance, and she could see horses in a corral. A tall man was working with them, his movements fluid and confident even from afar. Violet watched, momentarily distracted from her worries by the beauty of the animals and the skilled way the man handled them. "There's something, aren't they?" Violet startled at the voice beside her. A woman perhaps a few years older than herself stood there, smiling. Her calico dress was practical but neat, her brown hair tucked under a wide-brimmed hat. "I'm sorry," Violet said. "I didn't mean to stare." "No need to apologize. That's my brother, Cole Sullivan. He has a way with horses like nobody I've ever seen." The woman extended her hand. "I'm Rebecca Sullivan. You must be Thomas Fletcher's intended." Violet shook her hand. "Violet Blackburn, news travels quickly here." Rebecca laughed. "That's Gila City for you. No secrets last long." She glanced at Violet with kind eyes. "How are you finding it?" "It's different from the East," Violet admitted, "but beautiful in its own way." "That it is. Say, I'm headed to my brother's ranch to bring him lunch. Would you care to join me? I could introduce you, show you a bit more of the area." Violet hesitated. Her meeting with Reverend Parker wasn't until afternoon. "I'd like that," she decided. As they walked toward the ranch, Rebecca chattered amiably about the town and its inhabitants. "Cole and I came here 5 years ago, after the war. He served with the Union cavalry, learned his horse skills there. Started with just 20 acres and 3 broken-down horses. Now, Renegade Ranch is one of the most respected horse operations in the territory." When they reached the corral, the man Cole was gentling a spirited chestnut mare, speaking to her in low tones that Violet couldn't make out. Up close, she could see he was younger than she'd first thought, perhaps 30, with sun-bronzed skin and dark hair that curled slightly at his collar. A scar ran along his jawline, standing out against his tanned skin. "Cole," Rebecca called, "come meet Miss Blackburn. She's Thomas Fletcher's fiancée." Cole secured the horse and approached, removing his gloves. His eyes were the clear blue of a winter sky, startling against his weathered face. "Miss Blackburn," he said, tipping his hat. His voice was deep and measured. "Welcome to Gila City." "Thank you, Mr. Sullivan." "Cole," he corrected. "We don't stand on ceremony much out here." Rebecca held up a basket. "I've brought lunch. Miss Blackburn's joining us." Cole nodded and led them to a shaded porch attached to a modest but well-built ranch house. As they settled at a rough wooden table, Violet found herself studying Cole surreptitiously. There was an intensity about him, a focused energy that seemed contained beneath his quiet exterior. The conversation flowed surprisingly easily. Cole asked thoughtful questions about her journey west, never prying but showing genuine interest. Unlike Thomas's boasting, Cole spoke little of himself, though when the topic turned to horses, his passion was evident. "You ride, Miss Blackburn?" he asked, passing her a plate of Rebecca's fried chicken. "I did as a girl," Violet admitted, "though it's been many years." "It's a skill that returns quickly," Cole said. "If you'd like to ride while you're here, you'd be welcome to borrow one of our gentler mounts." "That's very kind, but I'm not sure Mr. Fletcher would approve." Something flickered in Cole's eyes. "Thomas Fletcher has particular views on what's proper," he said neutrally. Rebecca changed the subject smoothly. "How did you and Thomas meet, Miss Blackburn?" Violet's fingers tightened around her glass. "Through correspondence, I placed an advertisement, a mail-order bride." Rebecca nodded without judgment. "Many good marriages start that way out here. Women are scarce in these parts." "Thomas seems pleased with the arrangement," Cole observed, his expression unreadable. "I hope to make him a good wife," Violet said, the practiced words feeling hollow suddenly. They were interrupted by the approach of a rider. A young man reined in his horse and dismounted, touching his hat respectfully. "Mr. Sullivan, Miss Sullivan." His eyes widened slightly when he noticed Violet. "Billy, this is Miss Blackburn," Rebecca introduced. "She's engaged to Mr. Fletcher." Billy nodded. "Madam," he turned to Cole. "Mr. Sullivan, Sheriff asked if you could come to town. There's trouble with some drovers passing through." Cole stood immediately. "Rebecca, would you see Miss Blackburn safely back to town when you're ready?" "Of course." Cole retrieved his gun belt from inside the house, strapping it on with practiced ease. "It was a pleasure, Miss Blackburn. I hope we'll meet again before your wedding." As he rode off with Billy, Violet turned to Rebecca. "Is everything all right?" "Just the usual trouble when cattle drivers come through," Rebecca explained, beginning to clear the dishes. "The sheriff often calls on Cole to help keep peace. He has a way of calming situations without bloodshed. He seems different from most men I've met." Rebecca smiled. "Cole's seen enough violence to last a lifetime. He believes most fights aren't worth having." She paused, studying Violet. "He's a good judge of character, too." Violet helped Rebecca wash the dishes, then they walked back toward town together. As they approached the main street, they could see a cluster of people outside the sheriff's office. Cole was there, standing beside a badge-wearing man, facing down 3 rough-looking drovers. "You boys can drink your fill, but you'll respect the women in this town or you'll spend the night in jail," the sheriff was saying. One of the drovers, a burly man with a week's growth of beard, sneered. "Ain't our fault if some ladies like a little attention." "Those weren't ladies you were harassing," Cole said evenly. "And unwanted attention isn't something any woman should have to tolerate." The scene resolved without violence. The drovers retreated to the saloon at the edge of town, grumbling but subdued. As Cole turned away, he caught sight of Violet and Rebecca. His expression softened slightly as he approached them. "Everything's settled," he said. "Sheriff Davis has it under control." Violet glanced at the departing drovers. They didn't seem to want to listen to reason. "Men like that understand one thing, that their actions have consequences," Cole replied. He checked his pocket watch. "It's nearly 2. Don't you have a meeting with Reverend Parker?" Violet's stomach dropped. "Yes, I should go." "I'll walk with you to the church," Cole offered. "I'm headed that way." Rebecca excused herself to run errands, and suddenly Violet found herself alone with Cole. They walked in companionable silence for a moment. "Thomas Fletcher is a prominent man in Gila City," Cole said finally. He's built his reputation on being respectable and proper." "I'm aware," Violet replied, uncertain where the conversation was heading. "He expects the same from his wife." Cole glanced at her. "He's particularly concerned with appearances." Violet stiffened. "Are you warning me, Mr. Sullivan? Just making an observation." They had reached the white clapboard church. Cole stopped, turning to face her. "Thomas is not a man who believes in second chances or forgiveness, if that matters to you." Before Violet could respond, the church door opened and a gray-haired man in clerical attire stepped out. "Miss Blackburn. Thomas said you'd be coming. I'm Reverend Parker." Cole tipped his hat to both of them and departed without another word, leaving Violet to follow the Reverend inside with her thoughts in turmoil. The meeting with Reverend Parker was as difficult as she'd feared. His questions were probing, designed to uncover any impediment to a godly marriage. "And your family, Miss Blackburn? Do they approve of this union?" Violet folded her hands in her lap. "My parents passed away some years ago, Reverend. I have no family to speak of." "I see. And you were never previously married?" "No, sir." "Your letter to Thomas mentioned you worked as a seamstress in Philadelphia." "Yes, for a dressmaker." The Reverend nodded, making notes. "And what brings you to seek a husband so far from home?" The question hung in the air. Violet chose her words carefully. "I wished for a fresh start. The East holds painful memories." Reverend Parker studied her with shrewd eyes. "Miss Blackburn, as a man of God, I believe in honesty above all. Is there anything in your past that might concern your future husband?" Violet's mouth went dry. This was the moment: confess now or continue the deception. I had a difficult childhood, Reverend. My father drank heavily after my mother died. There were incidents I prefer not to recall. It wasn't the whole truth, but it wasn't a lie either." The Reverend's expression softened with sympathy. "I understand, my dear. Many come west to leave hardship behind. But remember, a marriage built on secrets rarely prospers." When Thomas arrived to escort her to dinner that evening, he was full of plans for their wedding and their future. "I've nearly finished the extension on my house," he said proudly as they ate. "You'll have a proper kitchen and parlor, nothing too extravagant but respectable." "It sounds lovely," Violet murmured. "Oh, and Mrs. Parker told me the Ladies' Aid Society wishes to hold a welcome tea for you tomorrow. They're quite eager to meet you." Violet nodded, trying to show appropriate enthusiasm. The weight of her deception felt heavier with each passing hour. "I saw you speaking with Cole Sullivan today," Thomas remarked, his tone suddenly cooler. "Yes, I met him and his sister at his ranch. They were very kind." Thomas's lips thinned. "The Sullivans keep to themselves mostly. He has some strange notions about equality and such. Fought for the Union, you know." "Is that unusual here?" Arizona was technically Union territory during the war, but sympathies were divided. Sullivan's made enemies by speaking his mind too freely. Thomas reached across the table to pat her hand. "Best not to associate too closely with them. A merchant's wife must be above reproach in her associations." Violet withdrew her hand under the pretense of reaching for her water glass. "Of course." After dinner, Thomas walked her back to the boarding house. At the door, he leaned in for a kiss. Violet turned her head slightly so his lips landed on her cheek instead. "Just a few more days," he said, his voice husky. "Then you'll be Mrs. Thomas Fletcher." Alone in her room, Violet removed the locket she always wore beneath her dress. Inside was a faded photograph of a young woman with Violet's same dark hair and eyes. "What would you tell me to do, Anne?" she whispered to her sister's image. The next morning brought unexpected commotion to Gila City. Violet was awakened by voices raised in the street below her window. Dressing quickly, She went downstairs to find Mrs. Holloway and her other boarders huddled on the porch. "What's happening?" Violet asked. "Telegram came for Sheriff Davis," Mrs. Holloway explained. "Apparently there's a woman claiming to be married to a man who's taken a mail-order bride in Arizona territory. She's provided descriptions that match several men, including," she broke off, glancing uncomfortably at Violet. "Including Thomas," Violet finished, her heart sinking. Mrs. Holloway nodded reluctantly. "Sheriff's gone to speak with him now." Violet's legs felt suddenly weak. She sat down heavily on the porch steps. If Thomas was already married, her own deception would be irrelevant, but she would be stranded in Gila City with no prospects and little money. Rebecca Sullivan appeared, hurrying up the walkway. "Violet, I just heard. Are you all right?" Violet nodded mechanically. "I'm fine, just surprised." "Come with me," Rebecca said firmly. "You shouldn't be alone with everyone gawking." Grateful for the escape, Violet followed Rebecca down the street and into the millinery shop where Rebecca worked. The owner, Mrs. Watson, clucked sympathetically and brought tea while Rebecca closed the shop temporarily. "It might be nothing," Rebecca said, pouring the tea. "The woman could be mistaken, or lying, or she could be telling the truth," Violet replied quietly. "I barely know Thomas. 3 months of letters, what does that reveal about a person, really?" Rebecca hesitated. "Thomas Fletcher has always been very particular about his reputation. He wouldn't risk it without good reason." Before Violet could respond, the shop door opened despite the closed sign. Cole Sullivan entered, his expression grim. "Rebecca, Miss Blackburn." He removed his hat. "I thought I might find you here." "What's happened?" Rebecca asked. "Thomas Fletcher has left town," Cole said bluntly. "Packed up in the night, apparently. Sheriff found his store locked up tight this morning. The safe was emptied." Violet sat very still, absorbing this information. "And the woman who sent the telegram, she's on her way from Denver. Claims to be Mrs. Fletcher for the past 8 years. Cole's eyes were kind as they met hers. "I'm sorry, Miss Blackburn." The implications washed over Violet in waves. No wedding, no home, no future in Gila City. "I see," she managed. "What will you do?" Rebecca asked gently. Violet stared into her teacup, mind racing. "I have enough money for a stagecoach ticket, perhaps to California." "Running again," Cole's quiet words brought her head up sharply. "I beg your pardon, you came west for a fresh start," he said. "Are you sure you want to keep running?" Violet stood up, indignation momentarily overriding her shock. "You know nothing about me, Mr. Sullivan." "I know you're not the first woman to come west with secrets," he replied calmly. "And you won't be the last," Rebecca intervened. "Cole, that's enough." To Violet she added, "You're welcome to stay with me until you decide what to do. I have a spare room." Violet's anger deflated as quickly as it had risen. "Thank you. That's very kind." Cole set his hat back on his head. "Sheriff Davis would like to speak with you when you're up to it. Just formalities, you're not suspected of any wrongdoing." After he left, Rebecca sighed. "My brother can be blunt, but he means well." "How does he know I'm running from something?" Violet asked. Rebecca smiled sadly. "Most people don't become mail-order brides unless they're leaving something behind." The next few days passed in a blur. Violet moved her few belongings to Rebecca's small house on the outskirts of town. Sheriff Davis questioned her briefly, but seemed satisfied that she knew nothing of Thomas's deception. The town buzzed with gossip. Thomas Fletcher, pillar of the community, exposed as a bigamist and thief. He had apparently been siphoning funds from the businesses where he served as treasurer, including the church building fund. 4 days after Thomas's disappearance, a woman arrived on the afternoon stage. Margaret Fletcher was a handsome woman in her 40s, with a dignity that impressed even the most judgmental of Gila City citizens. She confirmed what many had begun to suspect: Thomas had done this before, wooing respectable women by mail, marrying them, sometimes legally, sometimes not, gaining access to their money or property, then disappearing. "I've been tracking him for 2 years," Margaret explained to Violet when they met at Sheriff Davis's office. "You're the 8th woman I know of." "I had no money for him to steal," Violet said. Margaret's eyes were kind. "Then you're fortunate. Some lost everything." She studied Violet thoughtfully. "What will you do now?" "I'm not sure. I can sew, perhaps find work." "Mrs. Watson at the millinery might hire you," Sheriff Davis suggested. "She mentioned needing someone with needle skills. It was a temporary solution, but better than nothing." Mrs. Watson did indeed hire Violet, impressed by her fine stitching. The Ladies' Aid Society, initially gathered to welcome Thomas Fletcher's bride, redirected their energies to helping Violet establish herself. They found her a small room to rent above the dressmaker's shop and supplied her with fabric remnants to make items for sale. Through it all, Violet avoided Cole Sullivan. His words had struck too close to her carefully guarded truth. Rebecca became a true friend, visiting daily and inviting Violet for supper at her home each Sunday. Cole was occasionally present at these meals but kept his distance, speaking little to Violet directly. 3 weeks after Thomas's departure, Violet was working late at the millinery, finishing a rush order for a customer. The town had grown quiet, most businesses closed for the evening. As she locked the shop door, a voice from the shadows startled her. "Miss Blackburn." Violet whirled to find Cole Sullivan stepping into the pool of light from the shop's window. "Mr. Sullivan, you frightened me. My apologies." He gestured toward the street. "May I walk you home?" Violet hesitated, then nodded. They walked in silence for a moment before Cole spoke again. "Rebecca tells me you're doing well at the millinery. Mrs. Watson has been very kind. The whole town has embraced you. Yes, despite everything, they've been welcoming." Cole stopped walking, turning to face her. "Do you plan to stay in Gila City?" The directness of his question took her aback. "I haven't decided." "You're running out of places to run to, Miss Blackburn." Anger flared in Violet's chest. "You seem determined to believe the worst of me, Mr. Sullivan." "On the contrary," he said quietly. "I believe you're a woman of considerable courage and resilience. But courage isn't just about enduring hardship. Sometimes it's about facing the truth." "What truth would that be?" Cole studied her face in the moonlight. "Whatever truth you're hiding. Whatever drove you to become a mail-order bride." When she remained silent, he continued, "I recognize the look in your eyes. I saw it in many men after the war. The look of someone carrying a burden they don't know how to set down." Violet looked away. "Some burdens can't be set down, Mr. Sullivan." "Perhaps, but they can be shared." He resumed walking, and after a moment, Violet fell into step beside him. They had nearly reached her lodgings when Cole spoke again. "Rebecca and I are driving to Tucson tomorrow for supplies. We'd welcome your company if you'd care to join us." The invitation surprised her. "I couldn't impose. It's a long drive. An extra pair of hands would be helpful," he said practically. "And Rebecca enjoys your company." "And you, Mr. Sullivan, do you enjoy my company?" The corner of his mouth lifted slightly. "Despite my poor manners, Miss Blackburn, I find your company more agreeable than most." Coming from the taciturn Cole, it was practically a declaration. Violet found herself smiling. "Then yes, I would like to accompany you to Tucson." They set out before dawn the next morning, the wagon loaded with goods to trade in Tucson. The journey would take most of the day, with an overnight stay before returning. Violet wore her most practical dress and a wide-brimmed hat Rebecca had lent her against the Arizona sun. As the sun rose over the desert, painting the landscape in shades of gold and pink. Violet felt a sense of freedom she hadn't experienced in years. The open country, the clear blue sky, the companionable silence of her traveling companions, it soothed something in her that had been wound tight for too long. Rebecca rode in the back of the wagon for a spell to nap, leaving Violet alone on the seat beside Cole. He handled the team of horses with casual expertise, his forearms tanned and corded with muscle where he'd rolled up his sleeves. "You love it out here, don't you?" Violet observed. "The open country." Cole nodded. "After 4 years of war, the peace of it heals something in me." He glanced at her. "What about you? Do you prefer city life?" Violet considered the question. "I thought I did, but there's something about this landscape. It's harsh but honest. Nothing pretends to be what it isn't." "Unlike people," Cole remarked. "People have reasons for their pretenses," Violet replied softly. "Sometimes survival depends on them." Cole was quiet for a long moment. "During the war, I was captured at Chancellorsville, spent 8 months in a Confederate prison camp." He kept his eyes on the road ahead as he spoke. "Did things there I never thought I'd do, things that haunt me still." The admission surprised her. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because whatever you're running from, Miss Blackburn, it doesn't define you, not unless you let it." They stopped to rest the horses near a creek around midday. Rebecca prepared a simple meal while Cole tended to the team. Violet found herself wandering a short distance along the creek bank, admiring wildflowers that somehow thrived in the harsh environment. "They're desert Mariposa lilies," Cole said, coming to stand beside her. "They only bloom after rain." "They're beautiful," Violet murmured. "To survive such conditions and still create something so lovely. Nature's resilient that way." Cole stooped to pick one of the delicate blooms, offering it to her. "Like certain people I know." Their fingers brushed as Violet accepted the flower, and a current seemed to pass between them. Cole's eyes, so startlingly blue against his sun-darkened skin, held hers for a moment before he looked away. "We should head back," he said. "Rebecca will have lunch ready." The rest of the journey passed pleasantly. They reached Tucson by late afternoon, securing rooms at a modest hotel. After a hearty dinner, Rebecca excused herself, claiming fatigue from the journey, though Violet suspected it was a deliberate attempt to leave her alone with Cole. They sat on the hotel's porch in the cooling evening air, watching the busy street. Tucson was larger than Gila City, with a diverse population that reflected its history under Spanish, Mexican, and now American control. "It's strange," Violet mused, "how places have pasts too. Tucson has been Spanish, Mexican, Confederate briefly, and now American. Yet it endures, adapts." "Places don't judge themselves for their pasts the way people do," Cole replied. Violet twisted the stem of the desert lily he had given her, which she had pressed between the pages of her small Bible. "Mr. Sullivan, Cole," he corrected. "After spending a day in a wagon together, I think we can dispense with formalities." "Cole," she amended with a small smile, "you seem determined to draw out my secrets." "Only because I think they are a heavier burden than they need to be." Violet took a deep breath. "My sister Anne was 16 when she fell in love with the son of my father's business partner. When she became, in a family way, he abandoned her. My parents cast her out." The words came painfully, memories she tried to bury surging back. "I found her a place to stay, visited when I could. She died in childbirth along with the baby. I was 19. Cole remained silent, letting her continue at her own pace. "Afterward, I couldn't bear to return home. I took a position as a lady's companion in Boston, my employer's son." She faltered. "He took advantages. When I resisted, he claimed I had seduced him. I was dismissed without references." "That was not your fault," Cole said firmly. "Perhaps not. But in Philadelphia, when I sought work as a seamstress, my past followed me. There were rumors, whispers. A young woman alone, with no family, no references, people assume the worst. Violet looked down at her hands. When I saw the advertisement seeking mail-order brides for the Arizona territory, it seemed a chance to start fresh where no one knew me. And now, Cole asked quietly, now I don't know. I've built a small place for myself here, but if the truth of my past emerged, you believe the people of Gila City would judge you for circumstances beyond your control, wouldn't they? You said yourself that Thomas Fletcher valued respectability above all. Thomas Fletcher was a hypocrite and a thief, Cole replied bluntly. His opinion means nothing. Violet raised her eyes to his. And your opinion, Cole Sullivan, does that mean something? I think you're the bravest woman I've ever met, he said simply. And I think your past has made you who you are, someone with compassion, strength, and dignity, despite what the world has thrown at you. His words washed over her like a balm. For years, Violet had carried the weight of shame for circumstances largely beyond her control. To hear someone, especially someone like Cole, whose good opinion she'd come to value, speak of her with respect rather than condemnation, brought unexpected tears to her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. Cole's hand found hers on the bench between them, his calloused fingers warm and strong. "The past has no place in defining your future, Violet, not unless you give it that power." They sat in companionable silence as darkness fell, hands still joined, watching the stars appear one by one in the vast Arizona sky. The return journey to Gila City the next day felt different somehow. A barrier had fallen between them, and Violet found herself talking more freely than she had in years. Cole spoke of his experiences during the war, his decision to come west with Rebecca after their parents died, and his dreams for the ranch. "I want to breed horses that combine the speed of thoroughbreds with the endurance of mustangs," he explained. "Horses that can thrive in this environment. You seem to understand what it takes to adapt to harsh conditions," Violet observed. Cole glanced at her with a half-smile. "As do you." When they returned to Gila City, life resumed its new routine, but with subtle changes. Cole began to appear at the millinery shop on various pretexts, delivering packages for Rebecca, inquiring about a custom handkerchief, offering to repair a loose shutter. Each visit ended with an invitation, a Sunday drive, dinner at the ranch, a town gathering. Slowly, Gila City began to feel like home to Violet. Mrs. Watson promoted her to assistant manager of the millinery. She joined the Ladies' Aid Society and helped organize a fundraiser to replace the church building funds that Thomas had stolen. She made friends, established routines, put down tentative roots, and through it all, her friendship with Cole deepened into something more. Their courtship progressed with the steady, unhurried pace that characterized Cole himself, deliberate, thoughtful, building on solid ground. 3 months after Thomas Fletcher's disappearance, Cole invited Violet to ride with him to a ridge overlooking Renegade Ranch. The December air was crisp but not cold, the winter sun bathing the landscape in golden light. "I wanted you to see it from up here," Cole said as they dismounted. "To see what I see when I think about the future." Violet surveyed the ranch spread out below them, the neat buildings, the corrals filled with horses, the fields where Cole grew feed. It was modest compared to some spreads, but well-maintained and clearly prospering. "It's beautiful, Cole." He turned to her, taking both her hands in his. "I've been thinking about what you said when we first met about the past, about fresh starts." His blue eyes were earnest as they met hers. "I believe a person's past shapes them, but it doesn't have to define them. The past doesn't live here, Violet, not unless we invite it to stay." Violet felt her heart quicken. "What are you saying, Cole?" "I'm saying I love you, not despite your past, but including it because it made you who you are. And I'm asking if you'll consider a future here with me." He released one of her hands to reach into his pocket, withdrawing a simple gold band. "Will you marry me, Violet? Will you make a life with me here?" Tears filled Violet's eyes as she looked at the man before her, honorable, kind, strong in ways that had nothing to do with physical power. A man who had seen the worst of humanity during war and still chose compassion. A man who knew her secrets and loved her anyway. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will marry you, Cole Sullivan." His smile was like sunrise breaking over the mountains as he slipped the ring onto her finger. When he drew her into his arms and his lips met hers, Violet felt as though she'd finally, truly come home. They were married in the Gila City church 2 weeks later, with Rebecca as Violet's attendant and Sheriff Davis standing up for Cole. The entire town turned out for the celebration afterward, held in the community hall decorated with pine boughs and ribbon for the Christmas season. "Mrs. Sullivan," Cole murmured as they danced, his hand warm at the small of her back. "How does it sound?" "Like a new beginning," Violet replied, her heart full. As midnight approached, they slipped away to the ranch house that would now be their home. Cole had added a new room and furnished it simply but comfortably. A fire burned in the hearth, warming the December night. "Welcome home," Cole said softly, leading her inside. Later, as they lay together in the quiet darkness, Violet traced the scar along Cole's jaw with gentle fingers. "Do you ever think about how differently our lives might have gone? If there had been no war for you, no tragedy for me?" Cole caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. "We might never have met. I can't regret the path that led me to you, no matter how difficult the journey." "Nor I," Violet whispered. "You've taught me that the past doesn't live here," Cole finished. "Not in this house, not between us." In the spring, Violet planted a garden beside their home, vegetables for their table, herbs for medicines, and flowers for beauty. Among them were desert Mariposa lilies, transplanted carefully from the creek where Cole had first given her one as a token. "They might not take," Cole cautioned, watching her work. "They're wild things." "So were we once," Violet replied with a smile. "Yet look how we've flourished when planted in the right soil." The lilies did take root, blooming with delicate persistence through drought and heat. Like Violet herself, they proved more resilient than anyone might have guessed. Cole's horse-breeding business prospered. His reputation for fair dealing and exceptional stock spread throughout the territory. Violet's skills with needle and thread found new purpose in crafting fine saddle blankets and other tack that became part of the Renegade Ranch brand. Rebecca married a year later a quiet rancher from north of town who'd admired her from afar for years. She built a home with him on neighboring land, close enough for frequent visits but far enough to give both couples their privacy. When Violet discovered she was expecting their first child, Cole's joy was boundless. He built a cradle with his own hands, carving horses along the rails, and read books on childcare aloud in the evenings as Violet sewed tiny garments. Their son, James Thomas Sullivan, arrived on a scorching August day in 1878, with Rebecca and the town's midwife attending. He had Cole's blue eyes and Violet's dark hair, a perfect blending of them both. "He's perfect," Cole whispered, cradling his son with hands that trembled slightly despite their strength. "Absolutely perfect." As James grew, so did the ranch and their family. A daughter, Elizabeth Ann, joined them 2 years later, followed by another son, William, in 1882. Their home expanded accordingly, with Cole adding rooms as needed, but always maintaining the warm heart of the house where they had first begun their life together. Violet never completely forgot her past, the sister she had loved and lost, the hardships she had endured, but those memories no longer carried the sting of shame. Instead, they became part of the tapestry of experiences that had brought her to this life, this love, this family. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Cole surprised her with a journey to San Francisco, a city neither had visited. They left the children in Rebecca's capable care and traveled by train, marveling at the changing landscape and the bustling city by the bay. "It's magnificent," Violet said as they stood on a hill overlooking the harbor. But what?" Cole prompted. "But I find I miss our home," she admitted. "The open skies, the mountains, even the heat." Cole smiled, drawing her close. "I was thinking the same thing. San Francisco is a fine city, but Gila City is where we belong." When they returned, the children ran to greet them, full of stories about their adventures with Aunt Rebecca. James, now 8 and showing his father's affinity for horses, had been allowed to help train a new foal. Elizabeth, 6 and spirited, had apparently organized the ranch hands into a theatrical performance. William, not quite 4, clung to Violet's skirts, refusing to let her out of his sight for the first day. That night, after the children were asleep, Violet and Cole sat on their porch in the cool evening air, her head resting on his shoulder, his arm around her waist. 10 years, Cole mused. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday we met. Other times I can hardly remember my life before you." "Do you ever regret it?" Violet asked. "Taking a chance on a woman with such a complicated past?" Cole turned to look at her, his face softened in the lamplight spilling from the window. At 42, silver threaded his dark hair at the temples, and the lines around his eyes had deepened, but his gaze was as clear and direct as ever. "Not for a single moment," he said firmly. "Your past made you who you are, just as mine made me, but our life together, that's what matters. That's what we built day by day, choice by choice." Violet leaned in to kiss him, marveling at how the years had only deepened their connection rather than diminishing it. "I love you, Cole Sullivan, for seeing me clearly when I couldn't even see myself. And I love you, Violet Sullivan, for showing me that after war there can be peace. After loss, there can be renewal." His fingers laced with hers, the gold of their wedding bands catching the lamplight, "for proving that the past doesn't have to live here unless we invite it to stay." As they sat together watching the stars emerge over the Arizona desert, Violet reflected on the journey that had brought her to this place, this man, this life. She had come west seeking escape, but what she had found instead was freedom not from her past, but from its power to define her. The past didn't live at Renegade Ranch. Instead, it was a place where love took root and flourished, where strength was measured in kindness rather than power, where a mail-order bride rejected for her past had found a cowboy wise enough to know that the future was what mattered. And their future, like the desert mariposa lilies that bloomed year after year in Violet's garden, was both resilient and beautiful beyond measure.